Is it time to panic yet?
You can't produce these chips either because the fertilizer is disappearing. We didn't have fertilizer at all. Guess how many billion people the planet could actually support?
I don't know.
Between 1 and 2.
The war in Iran has gotten a lot worse than I initially thought it was going to be. I made a video last week on this concept, and I went pretty broad with how the Iran war was going to affect the prices of food and food production. I looked at oil, I looked at fertilizer, I looked at everything, but the situation's gotten a lot worse. I work as a farmer and I work as a gardener. And so because of that, I have a bit of a maybe expertise or a leg up in understanding fully the scope or the intensity of this entire situation. And the nitrogen fertilizer situation in particular is what's concerning to me.
One thing I failed to mention, but I think is really important to note, is that the Green Revolution, which is the basically invention of conventional agriculture, which then caused a massive population boom, is not that old. So it's 1960s to the 1990s is what this is considered the Green Revolution phase. And that's when we started using fertilizers and that to help boost the calories that we can produce in the world. And most research shows that without the Green Revolution, the population the world could sustain is somewhere around 2.5 billion. And currently we are at 8.2 billion. And not only that, the caloric percentage availability, they call caloric availability internationally, would actually be reduced by 10 to 15%, depending on where you are in the world. So it's not that long ago that we made modern agriculture. And if you look at the populations from the 1960s to now, you can quite literally see how the Green Revolution helped with that. So I think that's really important to note here.
Now, I'm not going to go into the huge nuances of this. If you want to know kind of big photo what this all means, I suggest you check out that video from last week. I'll put it up here. This video specifically is going to look at nitrogen, which is, again, 80% out of this region, and then give you the tools, whether you're a farmer, a gardener, or someone who's looking to garden, to be able to produce your own nitrogen, for lack of a better term, in your garden or in your systems, so you can actually work on a zero input playing field when it comes to specifically the nutrient that is going to be throttled or heavily disrupted. If not for this year, definitely for next year. Definitely going to see the effects for next year, because this stuff doesn't just get pulled out of the ground and turned into fertilizer overnight. A little bit of processing that goes on there, as you could imagine. The good news here is that we are not short on nitrogen. No, actually, the air you're currently breathing is 78% nitrogen, give or take a couple percentages, depending on your situation. And because of that, it means there's lots of nitrogen everywhere. The issue is that plants can't just pull nitrogen out of the air. It needs to be in the soil. And there are some plants that can do that, but we'll talk about that here in a little bit. Now, the way in which nitrogen is pulled out of the air and then turned into a fertilizer is via the Haber-Bosch process. Now, the Haber-Bosch process involves not only nitrogen being pulled out of the air, but also gas and fuel and dead dinosaurs. So the dead dinosaur go-go juice out of Iran is actually what the problem is, combined with their ability to manufacture it. And all of them are probably just marginally distracted at the moment away from doing exactly that. So the good news is the nitrogen is not ran out. It's there. It's everywhere. It's just not getting turned into something that you can then use. Now, for us gardeners, not a huge deal, because there's a way to obviously work around this, which we'll talk about here in a little bit. But for the world of farming and for your food prices, there's a big issue. Because farmers realize this. They're not stupid. Despite popular belief, they're actually incredibly intelligent people. I like to think of myself as marginally smart. I mean, I'm probably dumber than most farmers, for being completely honest, but I digress. They respond. So they're going to put less fertilizer in. They may just summer follow some fields that they weren't intending to summer follow, or they'll change what they choose to plant entirely to, again, change or limit the amount that they need to add. Now you're probably thinking, who cares? So what? They lower the nitrogen for a year or two, and then you end up with, the same yields because there's probably a little bit of reserve in there. But that's not the truth. That is, quite frankly, far from the truth. What you end up with is reduced or lower yields because farmland is very intensively farmed. And so the actual nutrient bank there isn't enormous, if you will. You do need those inputs to support the yields you want to get. Combine that with the fact that a lot of the crops that they're growing have very high demands via or due to genetic modification in some cases, but also from hybridization. They have higher protein contents. These higher protein contents cannot be accomplished without nitrogen. I don't know if you knew that, but the protein component that makes up plants is completely reliant on nitrogen being available for it. So the protein content of these plants is going to go down. The yield of these plants is going to go down. And the price of your groceries, it's going to go up. The nutrient quality of your groceries is going to go down. So there are certain crops that are going to be hit heavier than others. Corn, I think, is probably pretty obvious as a problem. We also have wheat that is going to be obviously problematic. And then we finally have canola, which is going to be very problematic for anyone in Canada, Saskatchewan. We are known for wheat and we are known for canola. And both of our crops are going to be very heavily hit in quality and yield because of this. Now, whether you're large-scale farming or if you are small-scale gardening, there are ways to kind of limit the punch that is lack of nitrogen fertilizer. Number one is you're going to want to look at nitrogen-fixing plants. You're going to want to just plant them everywhere you possibly can. I'm not talking about intercropping. I'm not talking about haphazardly planting them. I am talking blankets of as many peas, beans, chickpeas, you name it, that you can put in your soil. Now, very big misconception here is that the nodules or the legumes themselves fix nitrogen from the atmosphere and then that is then available to the plants. That could not be farther from the truth. That nitrogen is not going to serve you this year. And you don't need it to serve you this year. Because whether you're a farmer or you're a gardener, you do have some nitrogen reserves in the bank, if you will. And so your plants are probably going to be okay, maybe slightly lower yields, maybe slightly lower protein, slightly lower performance for this year. That's fine. Next year is what the problem is. That's what we want to improve. So if we do as many peas, beans, whatever you can possibly do in your soil, you end up with a great harvest of something that's high in protein and nutrients and et cetera and so forth. But it then will allow for that nodule, the roots, to decompose. And that decomposition of the nodules is what then releases that nitrogen in the future for next year. So this isn't for 2026. This is for 2027. Next up is I want you to avoid exporting nutrients. Nutrients is exported in a number of different ways. Removal of mulch, removal of weeds, and removal of harvest. So the first two are obviously pretty easy to contend with. If you're weeding, you're going to do the chop and drop method, or you're going to compost those weeds. You're cutting your grass. Rather than putting it in the bin, put it in your compost or use it for a mulch. When it comes to harvesting, you may or may not choose, depending on what the budget looks like, to not harvest as much as you normally would, and then compost as much as humanly possible. If you've got stuff in the freezer, in the fridge, something that's gone bad, compost it. Don't just throw it out. If you can get imports locally from anywhere, any sort of organic form, then again, put it in the garden. I personally draw the line at urine and feces, but there is definitely ways to do both of those. If you want to know the urine factor here, you're going to want to check out this video right here. I did a whole video on urine and whether or not you should use it. Very odd. It was a Geek Free request, but nonetheless, all of these things will allow you to seed, not just this year, but for years to come. By the way, what we call this is closed loop gardening or closed system gardening. Next up is we want to try to mimic ecosystems as closely as possible. So we want to place very heavy feeders with feeders that aren't as heavy, and or we want to plant heavy feeders with plants that actually mine for nutrients, meaning they have a taproot that digs down deep and pulls nitrogen or nutrients from lower in that soil profile upwards into what will soon be your compost or your chop and drop method, depending on which one you choose. So what this can look like is it could look like, for example, carrots and radishes, tillage radish in particular, planted around corn or tomatoes. That is an example of two kind of cohabitating plants, put it in the same position. Again, maybe isn't going to affect this year, but it will affect next year. Now, the next one, probably not as ethical, but fertilizer does not expire. And so long as you store it in a nice, dry, cool place, it's going to be good next year. So you could technically stock up if you wanted to this year before prices really, truly begin to spike. Now, the alternative to that and the other thing that you can do for this year without affecting next year or breaking the bank on a bunch of fertilizer is to actually really, truly focus on getting the right fertilizer and the right nutrients to your seedlings specifically. Seedlings are when the plant is going to determine what nutrient deficiencies it has, whether or not it ends up with blossom end rot, etc., and so forth. So a lot of the nutrients like calcium, magnesium are all uptaken currently, right now, in this moment, as you're starting things indoors. So one of the best ways to actually counteract this entire thing is to really hone in on fertilizing properly right now. With that being said, if you want to know more about what you need to do with your seedlings right off the hop to ensure that they are nutrient supported and they're going to give you really nice high yields within that first little 2 to 3 weeks of them germinating, you're going to check out this video right here. And that's what Google says you need to watch next based on what you've been searching, because they're watching you. I will talk to you guys next time. Bye.